I've always been a city guy, grew up surrounded by the rumble of traffic, crowded sidewalks, and the distant hum of passing trains. So, when my friend Luke invited me to his family's farm for the weekend, I hesitated. But after the endless, exhausting grind at work, the idea of some fresh air sounded like a blessing. The first day on the farm was surprisingly peaceful. Luke and I spent the day reminiscing, cracking jokes, and even helping his dad with a bit of field work. As evening crept in, the air grew cool, and the fields turned into a vast sea of shadows beneath the fading sun. It was beautiful, but something about the place made me feel uneasy. I brushed it off as city paranoia and laughed at myself. Then, Luke leaned over, giving me that mischievous grin he'd always had.
So, you've met the Scarecrow yet?
I chuckled, assuming he was joking. A scarecrow? Really? What, like some old farm myth? He didn't laugh.
It's not just any scarecrow. That thing's been here for decades, probably as old as the farm itself. My grandpa made it, or so the story goes.
I saw a hint of something dark in his eyes.
They say it's cursed.
I shrugged it off. Cursed scarecrow, all right. You've officially gone country on me. But later that night, as we sat by the fire pit, Luke's dad joined us. He was a tough guy, worn from years of work, not the type to buy into ghost stories or folklore. And yet, when Luke mentioned the scarecrow, his dad's face grew somber.
You city folk wouldn't understand, but out here things get strange. When my pa built that scarecrow, it was just straw, sticks, and an old shirt. But over the years, it started to feel wrong.
He paused, the crackling of the fire filling the silence.
The crows won't go near it, no animals do. Sometimes, late at night, I'd swear I'd hear footsteps in the fields, like something's moving around out there.
Luke's dad wasn't a storyteller. He told it plain, in a way that got under my skin. The fire burned low, casting long shadows, and I felt a strange sense of unease prickling my skin. That night, I tried to sleep, but every creak of the old farmhouse felt like footsteps. Eventually, I drifted off. The next day, I asked Luke to show me the scarecrow. He seemed reluctant, but he led me to the edge of the far field. There, surrounded by endless rows of corn, stood the scarecrow. It was tall, almost unnaturally so, with long outstretched arms, wrapped in faded cloth, and a face that looked like it had been painted on with tar, a grinning, leering expression that sent a chill down my spine. "Don't get too close," Luke muttered. I laughed nervously. "It's just straw, man. What's the worst it can do?" He looked at me seriously. "Look, I know it sounds dumb, but don't underestimate it. People say it moves." I rolled my eyes but couldn't shake the creepy vibe. I tried to shrug it off, snapping a quick picture for laughs. But that night, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking about that twisted grin, staring out over the fields, as if it were waiting for something. Around midnight, I woke up to a sound, a soft, crunching noise, like footsteps. My heart pounded, and I sat up, listening. Luke was sound asleep in the bed across from me. The farmhouse was silent, save for that faint noise drifting in through the open window. I got up and peeked outside. The fields were bathed in pale moonlight, casting long shadows over the land. Then I saw it, the scarecrow. It was still, but closer to the farmhouse. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but there was no mistaking it. It had been at the far end of the field before, but now it was halfway to the house. A chill raced down my spine. I backed away from the window, telling myself it was my imagination, that maybe someone had moved it as a joke. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. In the morning, I told Luke, but he brushed it off, saying it was probably just my mind playing tricks. I almost believed him. But later, when we walked out to the fields, the scarecrow was back at its original spot, far from the house. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt amplified. Every creak and groan of the old wood felt like it was closing in on me. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again, The soft, slow crunching sound, like something dragging through the field. I got up, my hands clammy, and crept to the window. There, in the moonlight, was the Scarecrow, standing at the edge of the yard, closer than ever before. My heart raced as I watched, frozen, as if daring it to move. And then, it did. Its head twisted, ever so slightly, and I swear its black painted eyes were staring right at me. I stumbled back, barely able to breathe. I wanted to wake Luke, to scream, but some primal fear kept me silent. I felt like I was in a nightmare, one where if I made a single noise, it would come for me. The next morning, I decided to leave. I told Luke I wasn't feeling well, packed my bags, and drove off. The whole way back to the city, I kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that twisted face lurking in the back seat. A few days later, Luke called me, laughing. He said I'd probably scared myself for nothing, that the Scarecrow hadn't moved since I left. I tried to laugh it off, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that leering face, the empty black eyes that felt so horribly aware. I deleted the picture I'd taken of it, but it didn't help. Even now, back in the city, I sometimes feel like I'm being watched. And when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still hear it, the soft crunching sound, dragging itself closer and closer. I haven't been back to the farm since, and I don't think I ever will.